lonely and blind. Perhaps there's a thing or two I think of lying in bed I shouldn't have said, but there it is. You see, it's all clear. You were meant to be here. From the beginning. Maybe I might have changed, not been so cruel, not being such a fool. Whatever was done is done. I just can't recall. It doesn't matter at all. You see, it's all clear. You were meant to be here. From the beginning.
You can be anyone this time around. You can be anything this time around. You can be anything this time around. You can do anything this time around. You can be anyone this time around. You're the first generation in human history to know how to control your own nervous system, change your own reality, blow your own mind, make up your own mind. You can be anything this time around. You can be God this time around. You've got to be God this time around. You can be anything this time around. You can be anyone this time around. You can be Krishna. You remember him. Body paint, barefoot, flute, standing down by the riverside, flirting with the cowmaids. Why not be Krishna God of love this time around. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. You can be Shiva this time around, sitting on your tiger skin, naked, waiting for your Shakti this time around. You can be Shiva, Om Shivaya, this time around. You can be anyone this time around. John and Yoko this time around. Allen Ginsberg this time around.
Dragging themselves through the needless streets at dawn, looking for an angry ticket. Angel-headed hipsters, yearning for the ancient, shuddering connection to the starry dynamo and the machinery of night.
Neti, neti, ved pukare.
You can be Maharishi this time around. You can be anyone this time around. Sit in a cave in the Himalayas with a 10-foot erection, making love with the universe and laughing and smiling at High Priest and everybody else this time around. You can even be High Priest of LSD this time around, running around, trying to turn on the world this time around. You can be Goddess of Love this time around. Baby, why settle for less than Goddess of Love this time around? And why take less than that from any man you meet this time around? To be cherished and loved, admired, worshipped as Goddess of Love this time around. You can be anyone this time around. You can sing it with a band this time around. You can be a Rolling Stone. Or a Grateful Dead. Or flying the Jefferson airplane this time around. You can make it a beauty trip this time around. Make music this time around. You can be anything this time around. You can be sky, earth, or mountain this time around. You can be water, thunder, wind, lake, fire this time around. Changing, cycling, be it all this time around. Libra and Taurus this time around. Pisces and Aries this time around. You can be anything, baby, this time around. sun god this time around. You can be the moon this time around, sending down silver radiance on the upturned faces of lovers and lunatics this time around. You can be anything this time around. You had 6,432,000 incarnations as lower forms of life before you got to be a human being. And then you got 200,000 incarnations of a human being before you grab that brass ring in the center and can say, as I'm telling you right now, I can be anything this time around. You can goof it this time around. You can get hung up on that power trip, chase money, competition, success. You've done that before. You're not going to do that again this time around. You can be anyone this time around. You can do anything this time around. You're God, baby, and it's your reality. It all comes from you this time around. Make it a good trip this time around. Make it a love trip this time around. I know you won't goof it this time around. Anyone this time around. You can be anyone this time around.
Vagner. And this is WFRE Radio 54.
We're on the air Tuesday nights from 8 to 11 o'clock. From 8 to 9, it's Bill Brady. From 9 to 10 on the first and third Tuesday of the month, it's Rock 54. On the second and fourth Tuesday of the month, it's Paul Reese and Derek Sanderson. And from 10 to 11 o'clock, The Hourglass with Eric Vagner.
And I hope your week is a pleasant one so far. Mine's pretty good so far. So, tonight I'm going to discuss, I hope you've gotten so far the idea of what I'm going to discuss for the music, which is going to be the idea of drugs. The question of LSD, mescaline, all those things that we've been hearing about for the past 10 years or so. But it's rather interesting that drugs have been around for much, much longer than that. Now, as soon as I think someone says drugs, you say, "What? Drugs?" You know, it's a whole thing that you sort of reject right away because of what's been happening in our present society. So tonight, I sincerely hope, I can get some points across, and I can create some new ideas here. I've been condemned by some people who have been calling me too super hep. But like Christ, I'll bear the cross. I'll bear the cross. Don't worry about it. And so, no further delay, I'll start my little talk about drugs and about everything else that deals with drugs. Well, first, I'd like to say that I think there's been a whole myth about drugs. You know, I think that perhaps drugs have developed into a kind of like a different type of escapism. More than a philosophical pursuit, it's become really an escapism pursuit. Particularly like dealing with the 60s. You had these revolutionary people, Leary, who today now is working with the FBI, and his son just renounced him as being a traitor to the cause, and you can imagine how, whatever movement there is, how it is now. But I think what's happened, basically, if you look at the 60s, the revolution of the young people in the 60s, you'll find that there was a great deal of a conscious kind of change. In other words, liberation against ego, forgetting ego. the ego of the past was an ego that dealt with materialistic kind of lust, should we call it that, and basically the young people of the 60s became much more aware, more sensitive towards themselves, and sought to liberate their ego away from this materialistic type of structure. Now, interestingly enough, drugs have been used 3,000, 4,000, 10,000 years ago with the ancient mystics of India. Buddhism, you can see all indications of ancient religions using different forms of drugs for ecstatic type of reasons, for religious experiences. So drugs are not just simply something happening in the 60s. The drugs have been going on for the past 10,000 years, if not more. So it's a relationship between mind and chemical structure, shall we call it. Now, if you know anything about Timothy Leary's philosophy, which I think unfortunately has been used by the media as a kind of like pop rock type of philosophy, what you have basically in the philosophy of Timothy Leary is a very interesting one, in that he talks about the idea that the conscious mind destroys reality or blinds you from reality. So therefore you take a drug, and that drug liberates the conscious structured mind, and then you experience reality. Like, for example, Huxley, the author of The Brave New World and some other great works of writing, he believed that the mind was a barrier towards reality, and that taking drugs would sort of like liberate your mind. All of a sudden you were bombarded by reality. You became reality to a great degree. So what we actually have here is that perhaps we have a reality that many philosophical leaders reject, and what you have is a drug, mescaline, LSD, being used to liberate the mind from this enslavement of structured ideas in order to experience reality as a clear response. Now, again, I have to fall back upon the idea that we've sort of looked at drugs as a kind of escapism. I mean, our whole society is geared towards escapism, from sexual desire to money, to clothes. It's all dealing with escapism. Our whole society is orientated towards escapism. In other words, even the idea of happiness and pleasure, it's orientating yourself towards yourself. And that in itself is escape, going into yourself, perhaps, to a great degree. Because we're not we're not philosophically orientated. I've been drinking tonight, forgive me. So I think that what happens is that you have a great deal of people who are not orientated towards experiencing themselves. See, our society is orientated towards the external environment more so than the internal environment. That we deal with the external structure more than the internal structure in our mind. By that I mean, for example, that we have been orientated towards creating a personality not for our own needs, but for an external order of society. We have become merchandise objects within a society. So therefore, everything that we are relating to becomes an escapism. So therefore, unfortunately, drugs, the orientation of drugs, the beginning of drugs was a philosophical pursuit. But now it has evolved into an escapist pursuit. In other words, we seek merely a different form of escapism, and drugs is it. But I must say again that drugs is a philosophical pursuit more so than a escapism. Now, if you look at your mind, for example, your mind and your body is a chemical structure. And that when you take a drug, you're taking a drug to create a chemical reaction. And so therefore what happens is, this chemical reaction within your body can hopefully release other chemical reactions within your mind that have been trapped there for centuries and centuries and centuries, because we are merely an extension of the original life form of life. You and I are 3 billion, 5 billion years old, but we are just simply expressing ourselves in different life forms, but life in itself has been here for 5 billion, if not more years. We are merely an extension of that primitive cell that began billions and billions of years ago, and we're just simply a more complicated type of life. But in reality, we're that same cell that evolved billions of years ago. So, the whole idea that in drugs one could create a chemical reaction, releasing the trapped things, the trapped responses of the past, so that one could experience reality on a much more deeper level. In other words, for example, taking a drug, for example, would be a chemical explosion against the structured mind of our society. We create a structured mind, And that structured mind holds us back from really experiencing reality. Because again, that structured mind is one that's is based upon the external order. In other words, everything outside of you creates an inner order. Okay, the outer order is an extension of your inner order. And to my point of view, and I think to a lot of philosophers' point of view, that the inner order should be an extension of all other things, and not the other way around. So therefore, what happens is that people become so enslaved in the external order that the inner order never develops. So therefore, what happens? If the external order collapses, the result is chaos, self-violence. And I think you can see that presently in our society, that people are becoming quite chaotic and violent because there is no inner order they can reflect upon, they can create upon. So therefore, I really try to make the point that perhaps maybe drugs have been used by the people in the wrong way, because that we have not been orientated towards understanding ourselves in the first place. That drugs is not the problem. The people who use the drugs are the problem, and therefore the problem lies in developing oneself before one can actually use LSD or mescaline, whatever have you. So the whole problem is, again, not the source of what you're using to release and to liberate yourself, but that which comes from you. In other words, your whole opinion, your whole value about yourself. Because what actually happens is that if we become chaotic, then drugs itself becomes really an extension of that chaos. In other words, for example, if your life means nothing and you look towards drugs as an answer, and if you really have no self-value about the experiences from those drugs, well, then that experience really isn't worth that much. So therefore, that experience becomes an extension of your chaos. So far, what I've been talking about is that your mind, your consciousness, is perhaps trapped, and that through a chemical change, your mind can alternate itself and experience itself. Now, that's just not in drugs, but in many other things too, that we constantly seek alternating our consciousness. Now, that can be done through many different ways, but particularly now I'm talking about drugs, because I really feel that people have the wrong attitude about drugs. You see so many people on the streets using drugs in the wrong way. Why? Again, because they have no real self-value. And self-value goes right along with using what you're using. It's the person who's using a gun, he really doesn't know how to use it if he has no self-value about that gun, understanding what that gun is. Well, the same thing with a drug. If you have no real understanding where that experience is going, where the direction of the experience is going, then why even take it? See, this is my whole point. I think that what's happened from the 60s to now is that we have merely absorbed the philosophical pursuit of self through drugs. It has failed, and now we are pursuing it as an escapism. And that too itself is failing, because now we're becoming more chaotic and more violent about it. It's interesting enough that we talk about drugs and how bad drugs is, but we condone smoking, and smoking in itself is a very bad habit. It can induce cancer, it can lacken your oxygen to the brain, it can cause forest fires, it can cause death. You smoke in bed, you fall asleep, something like that can happen. There are many indications of which tobacco is bad, many indications that alcohol is bad, and these are all forms of escapism. Alcohol, for every dope addict in a city, there are 2 alcoholics. For half of the homicides in our country are based upon alcoholics, half of the divorce cases are based upon alcoholics, half of the parental problems with children are alcoholics, half of the accidents in your street are from alcoholics. So, I mean, I think that what you have to understand is that there are many violent situations out there, and drugs, yes, is a violent thing, but so is alcohol, cigarette smoking, many other things. But because that we are orientated towards being afraid of the inner self, and drugs can be a way of experiencing inner self, we have greatly intensified our fears about drugs. So, you see, the thing is that, I think a lot of problems happen that when people don't really get into life, that what happens is, to a great deal, is that these people begin to look for escapisms. Again, I fall back upon the escapism. I must sound like a parrot, you know, like a little parrot, probably want to cracker or something like that. But I can't help it because I sort of get very annoyed at people. I see people who are, you know, stoned or what have you, because they're not really using, you know, the quality of the experience. That's just not dealing with drugs. That's dealing also with sex. That's dealing also with eating habits. That's dealing also with money. It's dealing with everything in your life. See, the drug habit, the problem with LSD, mescaline, is not the mescaline or drugs. It's the person who's using them. Okay, this is what I want to establish. It's the person who's using them. And what you have is people who are using these things don't really know what they're using them, what direction they're looking for in their experiences, and the problem is chaos, self-violence, and all of a sudden you hear society, everyone screaming, there are drugs, whatever have you. So again, what I'm saying is this, basically, is that our whole society is orientated towards the external order, okay? That's the first problem. That's one of the problems. Second thing is that one must strive for inner experience, and the inner experience cannot be found until the external order is somehow in some way removed. And through the chemical process of drugs, one can remove that external order, that external influence, and truly experience reality on a very profound level. Okay? Because, you know, life is an extension of everything else around you. In other words, for example, the spider on the wall. The spider is only merely aware of its own spider universe, spider web, spider thoughts, and spider actions. The same thing with us. We're only aware of our little minute world, our very small world. And when you release the other unknown parts of your mind, in whatever form you can release them into, whether it be drugs or anything, you all of a sudden get a whole different experience as well as image of life. You see, and this is the whole thing. In other words, getting a vaster picture of what life's happening. In other words, your interconnection between everything else. And this is all, really, basically what I'm saying, that I felt that I had to come on tonight and just talk about that to a great degree, because I think that people need change. And people generally look at change as a kind of chaotic, violent thing. People are afraid of change. And one shouldn't be afraid of change. One shouldn't be afraid of chaos. One should allow that chaos to happen, because chaos can be a very productive thing. It's all according to how much you're willing to relate and to experience yourself. I'm going to recite a poem that I'm getting laughs in the audience here. They think I can't read. They're right. I have a midget who imitates me. I have a little parrot over here who imitates my voice. Now, it's by, of course, the Beatles, and it's called Within You and Without You. And this is something we're talking about, the walls, the barriers, and trying to get into yourself. Okay? Within You and Without You, it's called, right? It's on Sgt. Pepper's. I probably you've heard the album, of course. You probably have. If you haven't, you've been in Twilight Zone somewhere, or Fifth Dimension somewhere, I don't know. Within You and Without You. We were talking about the space between us all and the people who hide themselves behind a wall of illusion. Never glimpse the truth, then it's far, too late, when they pass away. We were talking about the love we all could share when we find it, to try our best to hold it there. With our love, we could save the world if they only knew. Try to realize it's all within yourself. No one else can make you change. And to see you're really only very small, and life flows on within you and without you. We were talking about the love that's gone so cold, and the people who gain the world and lose their soul. They don't know. They can't see. Are you one of them? When you've seen beyond yourself, then you may find peace of mind is waiting there. The time will come when you see we're all one, and life flows on within you and without you. It's rather interesting. If you just can absorb those words, if you have the album, even, just check it out sometime, just put it on and just really get into those words, because they're really interesting. This is all exactly what I'm talking about right now, like, getting into yourself. When you've seen beyond yourself, then you may find peace of mind is waiting there. Just think about when you've seen beyond yourself. So the whole thing is that seeing beyond yourself, seeing beyond your structured ideas. Okay, we're gonna take a break for a little bit and put some more music on, and I think that give you a little relaxation here. Okay, and of course this is WF.
Timothy Leary's dead. Timothy Leary's dead. He'll fly through planes, take trips around the lane, reach back to save the day. Timothy Leary. Timothy Leary's dead. No, is outside looking. Timothy Leary's dead. No, is outside looking. He'll fly through planes, take trips around the lane, reach back to save the day. Timothy Leary, Timothy Along the coast you'll hear them boast about a light they say that shines so clear. So raise your glass, we'll drink a toast to the little man who sells you thrills along the pier. He'll take you up, he'll bring you down, he'll plant your feet back firmly on the ground. He flies so high, he swoops so low, he knows exactly which way he's gonna go.
Okay, that was Moody Blues. And if you're interested in the some of these tracks I've been playing, the first one that went on was Emerson, Lake and Palmer trilogy in the beginning, and then I had Timothy Leary from his album called This Time Around, and of course the Beatles, Within You and Without You from Sgt. Pepper, and you know, I just thought tonight would be a good night just to put some things on about drugs, whatever have you. This is WFRE 54, and don't forget, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock is Paul Reese, the guy who really lets you know what's going on in the world of Captain Kangaroo. Sometime I think I'll have Bozo the Clown on, we'll have Bozo here, or, I'll get someone on here, someone on a serious note. You know who I'll get? I think I'll get, I don't know, Jack Benny or something, or John Wayne down here. I'm sure they'll want to come down to WFRE 54. I know they will. I know. They're dying to call up here. Find out if I'll take them on. If they're good. If you hear me, Jack, I'll take you on. Contact us right now. We'll glad to take you right on. So, and don't forget me. I'm right here. And 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock is me, the Hourglass. Wagner here. Eric Wagner. That's my real name, Yeah, really. If you believe that, you'll believe anything. So, I hope, really, this evening really was sort of like an organizing one. Whatever way was organizing, I don't know. It's been wine and hang out. You could get some wine, hang out, look at a candle for a little while, and rub your navel and think that you're getting high or something. I don't know. Pick your nose and look at Buddha and say, a couple of words. I used to do in the bathroom. I go Mom would go, what are you doing in there? I'm like, strange, signs in the bathroom there, son. I said, Because I was sick or something, or constipated. I go, I'm only kidding, of course. A little spiritual funniness here, up in Nirvana. I had a vision one time. I was floating in Nirvana. You ever see Exorcist? That's how I sort of looked like. Like the Exorcist. Flopping out in and out, going here and going there, going all over. I was like, Nirvana trip. See, I've just turned the music completely off now. You're gonna hear my sensuous, fantastic voice. Not too conceited, right? Okay. I'm gonna go bliss off someplace, hang out, and I'm all my way home. And this is Eric Wagner, and this is the Hourglass. And again, I'm on 10 to 11. And good night, wherever you are, Jack Benny.
Thank you, Eric. And this is WFRE Radio 540 in New York. We're on the air Tuesday nights from 8 to 11 o'clock. From 8 to 9, you can hear Bill Brady. From 9 to 10 on the first and third Tuesday of the month, it's Rock 54. And on the second and fourth Tuesday of the month, Paul Reese and Derek Sanderson. And then from 10 to 11 o'clock, The Hourglass with Eric Wagner. This concludes another broadcasting day here at WFRE. On behalf of the staff and management, this is Steve Russell, wishing for you what I wish for myself, peace and happiness. Good night. WFRE Radio, 540, New York.
To feel